Hey, everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we create a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is Shanna Sims. She's the Assistant City Manager of University Park, Texas, up in the DFW area. We have a great conversation about the value of connection and relationship. Her definition of an Assistant City Manager is a connector, and so we dive deep into understanding what that means and how that helps the teams around her. We really get into what it means to have a strong circle, to have the people around you to support you on the journey. And of course, we talk about the unique ways people make their way to the city management office. You're going to love this conversation. Thank you for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Shanna, thank you so much for being on Leading Thriving Cities. We were excited to have you on. I've heard actually a lot of incredible things about you and your leadership and your mentorship. So I think we're going to have a great conversation.
I'm excited for the conversation too. Thank you for the
This
opportunity.
this is going to be fun. So you are currently an assistant city manager, and we laughed about the fact that you have been assistant city manager all over the place. Like you got a ton of experience under your belt. What's one thing you wish people really understood about that role or about public service in general?
Sure. Well, let me start with public service. I would just say being public service is a very rewarding profession. Knowing that you're going to come to work and you're going to do things that make people's lives better, but also have a long term impact on your community is wonderful. And it gets you through hard days. So I really recommend kind of local government and being in public service to anyone. I think it's a great profession. Um, but in terms of the role of the assistant city manager, yes, I think it's a great I call it the connector. I think that
Interesting.
you've got a city manager who does a great job leading your community and working with your
Yeah.
council to achieve, these key goals and objectives, but the assistant city manager is in a kind of a role where it's connecting all the pieces together. So, working with departments about how they work together, working in the community and putting things together, helping just make things work a little bit smoother. So, that's what I see the role is. Now, that, depends on the day exactly how that comes about, but I like thinking of it as a connector.
Are you and I'm always fascinated, and part of the reason I love this question is because everybody has a different take. I think you might be the first assistant city manager I've interviewed that said connector, and
Okay.
so that's kinda how you see it, and so what is it that ignites you about that idea of the connection piece? Because you gotta have the thing that drives you to get out of bed every day, and so what is it about that for you that you really love, that you gravitate to?
Well, I would say I gravitate toward relationships and really finding the way to develop something that's long term with an individual
Mm,
or an organization or a resident about what is it that you guys can do together that's more effective. And so
yeah,
I think that's what, and employees, I see that too, is how can I help them be more successful? So I think relationships is really kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning is thinking about those. What not only can you do to create new relationships, but the ones you have,
mhm,
really sustaining it. And I think that's something I've learned to be almost more disciplined about what are you
yeah.
doing to sustain and build those good relationships. So,
Yeah, being intentional about it, and I'm curious, and
yeah.
this will be an odd question, but I'm really curious about this. So your job is essentially being relational. It is making and building relationships and investing in them. When you go outside of that and switch over to personal life mode, are you really good at maintaining relationships? And I say that because my job is connecting with so many people that if you look outside of my job, I am as isolated as I can be. And
I
so
think I'm in
some of
the
that's
same
being an introvert.
I think in the same boat with you.
Okay, okay,
So,
that's
I
really
think I could
interesting.
do a much better job in terms of, like, personal and family relationships. I will tell you my favorite thing to do is read, because it's just calming, it's escapism, it's enjoyable, it's learning.
Yeah, yeah.
But, yes, I think maybe if I invested a little bit more outside of work on relationships, That would be a good thing for me to consider.
Listen, and don't knock the favorite thing to do being read. I have a I was literally just before we started this interview, we do 5 in a day, and it's a really long, draining day. Before we started, I was thinking literally about my reading chair and my Kindle that we're gonna spend some time together when I get home and get done with this project today. So
Absolutely.
that's valuable time.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you said you came to the city management world really kind of a traditional path. You went A2, you did some work as a finance director, and then got into the actual city management side of things. Through that process of navigating that, was city management always kind of the goal?
Um, Maybe, maybe not. I wish I was more certain on it. But coming out of graduate school, I got a master's of public administration, which is fairly common in the profession. I was definitely very intrigued by cities. I'm not sure if I knew what role I wanted to play in
Mm,
cities, but I liked the idea of all the things that cities did, and I felt like it was a good fit for me. I think it was more after I had been in maybe local government for about 10 years that I thought I saw some other good assistant city managers, and they're a little bit less in the crossfire than a city manager is, and I kinda thought, I kinda think maybe this is a better fit for me,
yes,
and maybe this is
yes.
something that I should consider. So I really think it was something maybe I grew into thinking
Okay.
about as a profession, um, and I think that's okay. That's maybe even
Yes.
normal to kind
That's
of
it
experiment
is.
and think through, and I've
There's so many
enjoyed it.
paths to that office, right? There's you can
Right.
get to city manager through so many different things, but I love that you have identified assistant city managers are a really, really great place to be. It is,
Yes.
like you said, it's less in the crossfire. Every time I'm talking to an ACM and they're like, "I can't wait to be a city manager," I'm like, "Why?" You're gonna get paid a little more, but boy, the pain goes up. You're in a really good position.
Yes, and I know people who have made the jump from assistant city manager, city manager, and have loved it.
Yes,
And so
yeah,
I
some are
think it
really
can
great
be
at it.
highly rewarding and and
Yeah.
and maybe someday that'll be for me. I'm not sure, but I think right now I'm really happy where I am and I'm growing, so that's where I'm content.
I love that.
So,
I like that a lot. So as you've navigated that and grown in your career and really done quite a bit already, what have you had to overcome internally? What's been some of those things that you have really had to wrestle with to get to this position and to be able to lead the way you lead today?
yeah. So, I mean, I think I had to overcome that I was never gonna know everything about the areas that I was gonna help manage. And I think that's something that you have to learn to almost be comfortable with your discomfort.
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
not the subject matter expert in public works, nor will I
Mhm.
ever be. But
Mhm.
I can help as an assistant city manager oversee public works and help when obstacles come about to try to identify solutions. So I think
Yes.
that's the main thing. I think you do have to have confidence in your skills.
Mhm.
I will tell you, I numerous times, I would be telling myself, "Just walk in the door. You're gonna be okay." You're kinda giving yourself your own little pep talk, and it's hard. And if you don't have
Yes.
fear, then that's probably not normal either. So, but you can't let the fear stop you. So,
You can't. It's really interesting. One of the previous interviews we did today with Melissa Grubb, she's a Round Rock Police Department commander. She talked about that imposter syndrome and the anxiety. And we really landed in this place talking about the idea that your fear is ultimately trying to keep you safe, but it does that by keeping you small and contained. And hey, if you never go in this room, you don't have to deal with pain. And so just don't go in the room. And so
right.
how have you learned to navigate that? Because my guess is it's not a switch you flip, it's an ongoing practice. How have you made a practice of saying, "No, we're gonna go in the room"?
Yeah, I think you first of all, you surround yourself with people that encourage you to go in the room,
Mm,
to persevere.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so if you have people that are giving you that advice and support, you feel stronger in itself. And then you also figure out it's it's one day. And if it doesn't go well, the next day comes and you
Yeah.
figure out where you go from next. So really there's not a whole lot of fatal mistakes out there, so you might as well try, and if it doesn't quite work, then you reassess. But I think it's a lot of just mentally like, "Yes, I can do this." Other people think you can do this too, and that's a big encouragement as well.
You really do have to. It was interesting. We were talking after her interview and talking about the idea that you need to surround yourself with people that have that view of you and they're more objective. And Emily, who's actually sitting behind this camera over here, said you got to have people you trust. And I think that's such a
Huh?
key is you need those people that you trust to speak into your life and remind you, hey, you are enough and you are capable of incredible things. And as
Huh?
you have navigated city management world and public sector, how have you built that circle out? Because we talked earlier about how
Mhm.
networked y'all are together.
Yeah.
How have you found that support and those people around you to speak into your life?
Yeah. No, I will say I've been fortunate to work with a number of good city managers and still have relationships with them and still learn from them. And so I really credit a lot of bosses for being supportive too. Um, I think I was
Yeah.
fortunate in the North Texas area to come into local government in the late 90s when a lot of other talented individuals also started in local government. We
Yes.
made a connection, in particular through a group called UMANT, which is the Urban Management Assistance of North
Mhm.
Texas.
Yep.
I'm so grateful for those friendships, but I have relied on them for advice and support. I mean, now for more than 25 years. Many of those are now still in local government and are still serving in that role for me. But I've also continued to develop other relationships. I can tell you, I've got a group of about 9 other, the either city managers, deputy city managers, or assistant city managers, and we connect virtually every 2 months. And it's just a nice opportunity, kinda check in, but support one another and get great new ideas. So, it's
Yes. Yeah.
something whenever I make the time to do it, I really relish what I get out of it. So,
Yeah. It's interesting because one thing you mentioned was you met all those folks early in your career, and yet a lot of them are still in this work.
yeah,
And I think a lot of maintaining and establishing sustainability in public service leadership is you have a strong circle around you. You've got people to support you because there's some hard days in y'all's business.
right.
And having that circle to lift you up and say, "Hey, I've been there. Yeah, it sucks. Can I help you?" That is
Yep.
so powerful, isn't it?
Yes, it's made all the difference in the world. So, yeah,
As you've
thankful.
done this and you've done a pretty good job, it sounds like, building your own circle out. Have you found yourself, mentoring and being a part of other people's support circles, as they have come along in their career?
Yes, and it's been so great to see, I would say younger people in the profession and see them progress now. I mean, it's wonderful and seeing how smart and talented these individuals are. And I'm thankful for in local government that we can learn from these individuals. So, yes, and being more intentional and looking in your organization and seeing potential. And seeing people like, let's give them this project. I think this is a good stretch project for them. Let's see what we can do. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much in public service, there's so much opportunity to do that. Because
yep,
especially you came up, you said through the A2 role. I think the A2 role is interesting because I think about in the private sector, you've got a business that does a thing and you're gonna do that one thing and everything is related to that one thing. In public service, especially as an A2, you go across so many different roles and so many different departments, and you're forced to work with people that are far above you on the food chain. And yet it's like, hey, you need to go lead this group of directors and get them to do a thing. And I think that it's so interesting the
yep.
variety of things that you could try that stretch you to learn. And so as you navigated through being an A2 all the way up through where you are now, did you love that variety piece?
Oh, yeah. I absolutely loved it. And just the fact that you can continually learn, and
Yeah.
that you get to work with just lots of talented people in lots of different roles.
Yes. Yeah.
It was wonderful. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm guessing that I'm a huge nerd, and I have no problem admitting that. I have a theory that everybody's a nerd. I was working with a, electric utility department the other day, and I mentioned that they were nerds. "We're not nerds," and I said, "Hold on." Explain to me like the complexity of how you get electricity from where it starts to my house. And they start diving into it, and I'm just sitting there staring at them, and they stop and went, "Oh, we're nerds." Like, yeah, yeah, you are. And that's part of what I love about public service is you have so many people that are so smart, and they are at all levels in all depart I don't care what the department is, from public works to the city manager's office. You have very smart people that are really good at what they do, and I love the just getting to engage with them, and so I'm guessing through that process, you probably get a little nerdy too and enjoy the complexity of the conversations and the challenges y'all have to unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I did in my career that I'm thankful for is I went and worked in a finance department and really dove
Yeah,
deep into budget, and really understanding all the different aspects of it, but then almost to the line item detail in departments, and did that in two
yeah,
different cities. And just gaining that expertise and confidence in budgeting has really been beneficial for me.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you talked earlier about how much you love public service and what a impact it's had and how important it is. So when we talk about young people thinking of going into public service, based on your decades of experience now, what
Mhm.
advice would you give them if they were thinking about this? How can they navigate it and maybe avoid some of the potholes that tripped you up or that you fell into?
Well, sure. I mean, I think first of all is find a good organization. Really, a
Mm,
good organization that supports learning and that has good individuals that you can learn from is the best thing you can do. I would not get focused on the job title per se or the
yeah,
salary because really the right organization gives you the ability to move forward.
yes.
I would tell people just to be open and flexible to find ways to say yes. Um, there's projects that were really when I got approached by them, we're like, I don't know. But then I'm so glad you did it because you learned
Yeah,
something and you benefited. So I would just say, as a younger person, always look for that opportunity and be
yes,
willing to say yes. Even if
yeah,
you're busy or it's something new for you, get out of your comfort zone, try it because you're not going to know unless you try
yeah.
it. So
So if I'm that young person that says, "I'm looking for a good organization, I'm flexible on title, I'm flexible on money," what should they be looking for? How do they know when they're in the interview process? What are some marks of a really great organization? And are there any things they can look for to go, I don't know, that's a red flag for me?
I think good people is what you look for first. I think you just look
Okay.
for people that you have a good rapport with, that you can talk with. Um, so I think that's first. Kind of gauge it. Is this someone that you think would invest in you in terms of time and resources?
Mm,
In terms of organization, I think you want to look for an organization where people stay there for a little while. That there's opportunity, that people have had the opportunity to grow. But also, if you see an organization where you've got a lot of turnover happening, and I mean, it could be for a variety of reasons too. So let me
sure.
say that. But I think you look for that. I think you ask other people that are knowledgeable what they know about that organization, what
Hmm.
they know about the position, if if there is a specific position. If you can talk to someone in that organization that just gives you candid thoughts, I think that's one of the best ways to get a gauge on
Yeah.
if that's the right opportunity.
Yeah, that really
Uh,
is good. And it's interesting too, because we often talk about this idea that when we're so focused on the top of the mountain and that's all we care about is getting to that top, we don't really design a journey that we love. We don't design a journey that we love every step, we love every day. We look around us every day with gratitude. And
yeah.
so we get so focused on that top that we lose sight of where we are. And we're not really present in our lives even. I know it's funny in parenting, I've been guilty of that, where when my
Mhm.
kids were young, it was like, why can't you just grow up? And now that they've all grown up and left the house, I'm like, I kind of miss them every once in a while.
Yeah.
By the way, if my kids are watching this, don't please don't believe me, but it's true. I do kind of miss those younger days, and I think there's something to that with our careers where we're so focused on that next. that we don't stop
Yeah.
and focus on today. So as you've kind of navigated your career, did you find yourself on that climb really focused on the next level, or were you able to find some gratitude and some joy in the journey?
So in a hindsight, I should have enjoyed it more all the way through. I think it
Yeah.
was only toward, the last 10 years that I've really taken the time to think and enjoy the journey as it went. I think
Yes.
earlier in my career, it was about the next step, the next project.
Yep.
Um, so I wish I would have enjoyed it a little bit more than I did. But I really think it was probably about 10 years ago that it was really about, you know what, this is about more than any one project or accomplishment or anything like that. It really was about the people that are around you, and are you happy every day going to work, and do you think you're making an impact? Um,
Yeah.
so I think maybe that's something that happens just in life. When you, with age, you gain that perspective that you wish you had early on, but it's something
It
maybe
it
with
does happen with
experience.
Yeah, I agree it does happen with age, but I'm really hopeful if we can have these conversations enough that eventually a couple of young people will look at them and go, "You know what? Maybe I should slow down. Maybe I should be more patient. Maybe." 'Cause
Yeah,
it's funny, we I told you earlier, we do 5 of these interviews in a day, and this is number 4, and I think all the ones previous to this have hit somehow on when we were younger. We should have slowed down. We should have looked around. We should have been more patient. We should have said yes to some things, but set some healthy boundaries. Like all these things we
yeah,
have learned in hindsight that we're hoping this younger generation coming in can navigate more sustainably than we have, because
agreed.
we've all experienced burnout in the process because
Yes,
we didn't have good boundaries. We didn't actually stop and smell the roses. And so, have you hit any of those walls in your journey where you just hit that burnout wall of,
sure.
okay, here's a breaking point? What did that look like for you?
I think, and well, not good. I think it looks I think it looks like impatience. That's what I would
Ah,
say. I think it's just
okay.
impatience with your coworkers and patience with your family. If
Yeah.
if you're just at a point of kind of sustained high stress, I think
Mhm.
you just aren't enjoying things, and that gets expressed in ways that it shouldn't. Um,
Yeah.
and I think it really takes, and sometimes it's hard. You got to get through a big project or a big deadline, and then you can look back and find things you should have done differently. But um,
Mm.
I will say I've been fortunate to work for organizations that were supportive of um, taking vacations and just work life balance, and you know
That's huge.
yeah, take this afternoon off. I mean, I think it's a good thing, and I think now I'm more cognizant in terms of the people that I work with looking for
Mm.
burnout and trying maybe to not let it get to a really bad point. So,
Yeah. How have you so it's one thing for an organization to say, "Take your time off, take care of yourself," but if they don't necessarily model it, we struggle with it. Have
absolutely.
you always been good in those organizations at disconnecting and taking your time, or did you have to learn to get better at that?
I had to learn to get better. I used to I can tell you when I was an assistant too, I loved having my to-do list checked off. I would come in on weekends and just get things done. So, Monday morning,
Yeah.
we're in a good place, and the problem is you can't sustain that. And
No.
it's just not a good thing. And so I think you
Yeah.
have to learn it the hard way. Now
Interesting.
I mean, I have a 15-year-old, and so, I mean, I think having a child almost just resets it for yourself because you gotta
Yeah,
go
you
leave and
can.
pick up a kid, and it
Yeah.
sort of almost sets it for you, which is in some
Yeah.
ways really nice, where, if before you could, just make it work.
Yeah. It's really funny with kids too, watching them. I'm guessing you've encountered this with your 15-year-old, is they're under the same pressure we were under as kids in terms of just do more, accomplish more. You're not enough, so you've got to go prove it and go get all these things done. And it drives them in very similar ways. And I see that in my sons now as they are now
Mhm.
in the world building their own lives. And I'm the old man in the corner sitting there going, guys, slow down. You got a long career. You don't have to take over the world instantly.
Yeah.
it's just funny watching them navigate same things. And you said, I think you just have to learn it the hard way. And again, I'm hoping if we beat
Mm,
this drum enough, eventually they'll start to tap their feet to the same rhythm and go, okay, maybe I don't have to burn out.
yeah.
But yeah, some of it does have to be learned the hard way, but hopefully there's some wisdom that seeps in. That I'm
Yeah,
not going to give up hope on that fact.
and I think just having candid, open conversations about it. I don't think people like to talk about getting burned out, but I think it happens. And so
Yeah.
maybe the more we talk about it, the more the people realize it's not just them. So,
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. I think it's part of why we have these conversations in the first place is
yeah,
here's all the great things we've learned and great things we've done. And yeah, here's the hard side. Here's the challenging side of our careers and our paths and where we've been.
right.
We really a lot of the work we do is around this idea of how do we help teams thrive.
Mhm.
And I'm a big believer that if your city staff is not thriving, the city itself is not thriving.
I
I don't
agree.
care what your economic growth says. I don't care what your population growth says. If your staff is not in a good place, people are going to have a lot of really bad interactions, and the citizens are going to start to question whether they even want to live in the city. And one of the best conversations, actually, it may have been you and I were talking earlier about Lauren Rose, who you've mentored,
Mhm.
and you've been a really good positive force in her career. I think it was she may have been the one that talked about this idea that if we want people to love the city has to love them first.
Oh,
And
yep.
I think that's if we're not thriving, how are we going to show love? How are we going to
Yeah.
demonstrate that to the citizens? And so we're all about sustainability and thriving for our people.
Yep.
So as you have now a few decades of experience, you've seen a lot and you've seen public service evolve over the
Mhm.
last few years. What do you think we need to rethink entirely? What needs to change in order for our people to thrive in a very sustainable way?
Well, I don't know if this is change completely, but I think trust is just so important. I think
Mm,
you've got to trust your employees that they've got the right skills and they have the right judgment to make the right decisions. And then I think um, residents have to trust that their city organization is working in the right direction for them. It really is, I think it's almost circular in terms of just making
yes.
sure that we are instilling trust. And that's a daily thing. But
Yeah.
it's also you got to kind of keep it. So because
Yes.
mistakes happen and that's okay. But if you have a trust in that person, if you have a trust in your city government that they have the right intention and are moving in the right direction, then that can
Mhm.
that can go a long ways.
Yeah. So much of that trust is relational, right?
Yes.
It's if I have a good relationship with this person, I'm more likely to trust them. What are some things y'all have seen that y'all have done to try to build better relationships internally with your teams in order so that there is more of that trust built? And what have y'all done maybe externally with citizens to say, hey,
Mhm,
we're really intentionally trying to build this relationship so that when a pipe breaks, when
mhm,
a red light goes down, when something happens, they trust that we are going to figure it out and they don't immediately jump to, well, this stupid city.
mhm.
How do you build that relationship in order to build the trust?
Well, and I think it's like with a lot of relationships, it's built with time. It's built with
Mm,
good daily interactions that happen. So I'm
yeah.
going to start internally first. I think you really you look for hiring the right people with the right
Hmm.
attitudes. That goes a long ways. And then I think you do a good job in terms of training and working with people and helping them
Hmm.
understand not just their role but the whole city's role. And so once you get that good basis, I think you really have to kinda let go and let them do things, and then most
It's a
importantly
definition of trust, right?
yeah, absolutely, but most importantly, when things don't exactly go to plan,
Yeah.
the worst thing to do is to get mad and get over upset, and I think being
Yes.
calm and thinking through it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are a lot more introspective when things go wrong than maybe
Mhm.
you realize at the time. So it's almost that not having that overreaction is important. Um, I
Yeah.
think that carries over to the community, but I also think it's a series of having good conversations with people knowing that when they tell you a suggestion or an issue that you're responsive, and I think you just build that trust. And I see that. I there's a lot of good cities I've worked in that have done that and have built up that trust with those neighborhoods, with those residents, with their council, that
Yeah.
things are going in the right direction. And it gets people through
Yeah.
hard times. So,
Yes. Yeah, when
yeah.
you know that you can trust the person on your left and the person on your right, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
You started this by talking about assistant city managers as connectors,
Mhm.
and you which departments do you lead within your organization?
Sure. I've got 6 departments right now, and so I primarily have most of the field operations. So I have public works, parks and recreation, engineering, development services, library, and then I also work with communications. So I have an internal department
Mm,
too. So
yeah.
it's a fun mix.
So I'm curious. That is a very interesting mix, actually.
But
I
yeah,
love you have public works and the library.
yeah,
It's so fascinating. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't see that combination very often in cities, but you as this connector between those 6 departments,
yep.
what are you doing to intentionally keep them connected? Because I always kind of view it, I think everything in leadership goes back to marriage and parenting. And when I think about it in terms of a marriage, there are seasons in a marriage where, like my wife and I, all we did was solve problems in that season. We weren't really
Mhm.
relational. We were just working on challenges. Those were not very good seasons for our marriage. But the seasons where we really focus on the relationship and not just solving problems, that's when the good things happen that enable us to solve problems later in a much more relational, much more healthy way. I
Yes,
think it's the same with departments. If the
I
only
do too.
time that, Public Works interacts with Parks and Rec is when they're solving a problem, they're more
Mhm.
likely to fight through the process. They may solve the problem, but they can't stand each other when they're done. And so, are there ways that you're intentionally connecting your departments to build the relationship so that when the problem comes along, it's us together solving it, not me versus you trying to hopefully come up with a solution?
No. I think that's a daily kind of challenge for me, but I think you have to be intentional about being multi-departmental in your approach to projects, looking
Okay.
at a project out there from different departments and having them actively involved from the start. I also think communication is important, and I actually think face to face is really the way to go. And even though people are busy, having a regular meeting where a lot of, in particular, the field departments are talking about what projects they're working on, have the opportunity to ask questions. We kind of
Mhm.
troubleshoot maybe timelines and things like that. You build a strong relationship there. Then, when you get to a situation, say you have storm damage or something like that, and you really are kind of on all hands on deck, it really goes really smoothly. One is because they know their jobs and they know exactly how to execute, but also they also know how to communicate with each other because they've been working on projects together and initiatives and thinking through things. So, is it
Yeah.
perfect? No, but I think you work on it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you said something interesting there about in person. I
Yes.
think there is something about that, and it is so hard to do. It is so challenging, and so I'm curious, as your role as connector, how often are you able to be really intentional and say, "Hey, I got 1,000 things on my schedule today. You know, the best thing I could do right now is to go out to a public's work crew that's in the middle of something and just say hi, make sure that they know we support them." Are you able to do that very often, or is it really a struggle for you?
I would tell you, right now in University Park, I can do it more often. I can tell you just because I think I've got a little bit more flexibility in my schedule and I can make it.
Mm,
It's also a smaller community, so I can geographically get there. I will tell you the benefits of just going to people's offices or workplaces or the library, is just a benefit.
yes.
It's instead of having people come to you, always go to them if you can at all possibly do
Yes.
that. Now, are
Yeah.
there some times it's just not possible? Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, you go through, a week where you're intensely working on budget or something to that effect, and it's just not possible. You know what? Give yourself grace. But I
Yes.
think you get back on the horse and you find the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I like that because that's often some of the most important work we do is getting out of our office and going and connecting with those people because then there's that
Yeah,
opportunity. I think when we jump on a Zoom call, it's very quickly, how do we just get to the subject? Because nobody likes doing this.
right.
Nobody likes sitting in front of a computer, seeing their own face as they're talking, and nobody enjoys that. And so it's very quick. Can we just get through this? But I
Right.
think that ability to go sit in Carl's office and be like, you see their pictures of their kids. "Hey, Carl, I forgot your son plays baseball. How's he doing?" You know?
Yeah,
And that 3, 4, 5 minutes talking about Carl's son means a lot to him. And
yeah.
that can genuinely that again, that's that relational piece. I think that's really important. As you've kinda navigated your career and probably gotten really good at that, where do you run into challenges sometimes with just the amount of things that land on your plate? Because even in a small city,
Mhm.
an ACM is doing 1,000 different things. And
Mhm.
so are you really good at time management and navigating that and being able to keep all the balls juggled in the air?
I'm pretty good at time management. But I will tell you,
You're a
I kind of
calendar
think
nerd,
I was.
aren't you?
Yes, I love my calendar and I work on it all the time. And so, yeah, no, I think time management kind of comes naturally to me. So I kind of work
Yeah.
on that. But I think you kind of reset, think about priorities. And
Mm,
I mean, there's times you're like, you know what? This is not that important. Focus on this and, go on with your day. I'll tell you, I'm a morning person. And with having field operations like Parks and Rec and Public Works, that is
that
great.
starts at, like, 5 AM?
Yes, because, you've got other people that are in it with you. So, no, I mean, I think you kind of learn what works for you. I try to plan it. If you think about big projects and when deadlines are, I kind of try to block time on your calendar so you
Yeah.
can have that focus. So it's not perfect, but I do think being organized helps a lot. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I like that a lot, that's interesting. What is so outside of this, we always talk about the idea of rest, and rest being
mhm,
a thing that really brings life back to people, and we have to get better at it. I think as
yeah,
a society, we suck at it. I think as a profession, we're not always the best at it.
yeah.
What are things that you're able to intentionally do that really bring life back to you, that get you energized to come back Monday and I always tell when I rest really well on a weekend because by Sunday night, I'm like, yeah, Monday, here we go. And when I don't rest well, it's like, oh God, it's Monday again. What do you do that actually intentionally causes restoration for you and helps you renew?
I think you learn and it's dependent on your community and a council, but I think there's times you leave work and leave it aside. Nothing
Mm,
has to get solved tonight. So that can wait. And I think I've gotten better about that, about kind of
mm.
understanding the urgency or the non-urgency of things and really not I'm okay now with things that are undone, I guess, is what I would
Yes.
say of it.
That's
Um,
something when we think about what we're bad at early in our career.
yeah,
If we could get people to understand this doesn't have to be solved tonight.
correct.
There is life and death. There is urgent, but that is a very small category. And all these other things by 6 o'clock, our the good work we had in us is done. It
Yeah,
is not happening after that. And so can we disconnect and actually just leave it undone and find peace there? That's really
yeah,
hard to do.
absolutely. And I will tell you, I credit my son just in terms of his
Okay.
activities. So he plays baseball. So going to
Yeah.
baseball tournaments on weekends, I can not think about work. I mean, it's just one of those things that it's a different part of your life. And
Yes.
when it
And
works
it's
out,
all
it's a
consuming
nice
those
break.
tournaments, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're the is it like the weekend long? You're
Oh,
playing multiple
absolutely.
games in a
Yeah,
day. It's yeah, I've been there.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it is consuming.
And and no one there cares what you do or where you work. So it's not what's important. So
That is
yeah,
really interesting. That's interesting. Well, Shannon, this has been such a great time. I really
I've
deeply
enjoyed it too.
appreciate your perspective on this. I'm always fascinated by these as we do more and more of these, and people are always reaching out and saying, "Hey, I saw an episode with so and so, and it really was impactful." And so I can't wait to hear how your perspective, which is very uniquely you, really impacts people. This is going to be a lot of fun to see.
Well, and I've enjoyed your previous ones too. Just, you always learn something and you think about it, even the people that you know, they're like, wow, that was so insightful. Or I'm going to try to apply that idea in my work. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Wow.
the idea transfers pretty wonderful. So,
It really does, and that's why we love having conversations with really smart people, so that's why we appreciate you
oh,
deeply.
well, thank you for the opportunity. This has been great.
Thank you
Well,
too.
good.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. If you'd like to find out more about what we do at Forward Partners, you can find us at www.forwardpartners.net. We love partnering with cities to learn how to develop healthy leaders and thriving teams. We do that through a variety of means, from leadership coaching to online courses to facilitating retreats. If you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out. You can also find us online with all the different socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are putting out content all the time, and you can find it at Forward Partner.